with us for the last 4 weeks. Our exciting journey, and our exciting journey continues. And those of you who have been with us over the last 4 weeks know the drill. Know that the very first thing that we're going to ask you to do is tell us who you are. So, David, if you can just launch that poll so we can, persons kind of start by filling in, you know, doing the poll so let us know exactly who you are so our presenters can best deliver to the needs of everybody in the room still. So again, greetings. I'm gonna give you a couple minutes to do that and then we're going to jump right into it. Thanks. All right, morning again, everybody, and welcome. Yeah, we're gonna make the poll run for a little while longer, even while we go ahead and start still. Just a couple of sentences to set for housekeeping matters and to set context. We have been doing this JBDC in concert. This week is the fourth week that we have been doing it, and really the responses from you guys has been really good, and we're very encouraged by that. Last week we had to specially greet the folks who live in St. Catherine because you were newly on quarantined or not quarantined. You newly had new conditions of curfew, so we had to specially greet you. Not to worry, we especially greet you again for this week because we understand sometimes, although we know it is required, it is still a little difficult. We understand that very well. But I mean, the conditions have been eased a little bit. So thank you for joining and thanking everyone for really joining. So the first week we dealt with how it is that we can carry out business online and monetize online, and we had some really good panelist discussions were good, as you know, those of you who were here. The second week we dug a little deeper, the digitization of the economy and what that means in terms of opportunities and so on for creative industry persons especially, and how it is that we can exploit some of these opportunities. And we delved a little bit in terms of how it is that we can maximize the use of certain technologies that are available to us online, you know, so we delved more into that. Last week, the journey continued with a session on brand building, and we spoke about the need for you to build your brand and to make sure that even before you try to follow your journey online, it's important for you to understand the brand and the brand infrastructure, understand what your personal brand is, understand what it is that your business's brand is, what's the difference between your personal brand and your business brand, if there's that, and so on. That's a whole real understanding around branding and the value of branding. So that was very good for us. David Arsancia, you can let in minister and give him a co-host status. So that was last week. So this week, we are very excited about this topic, as well as we have been for all of our topics. This week, we're talking about intellectual property. And we have a very, very strong group of experts to speak with us. In previous weeks, I would have said an August panel, but it's April, so I can't use that line. Anyway, okay, drum roll. Right, so we have a very experienced panel of presenters that are going to share with us this morning. Intellectual property is something that creatives need to understand how it is that you incorporate it in your business model, how it is that you leverage the intellectual property that you own into monetizing it and enhancing your business's products and your business's prospects as well. You know, so it's one of the reasons why the creative industries tend to stand alone in terms of the fourth industrial revolution, because one of the things that is at the core of the creative industry persons is an intangible asset, which many times can be converted into an intellectual property, which you can leverage and still continue to earn, even while robots and so on are taking over the world. So it's a very important for us to understand intellectual property in this time, yeah, and as it relates to the rest of our business. So we're going to jump right into it. Before we jump right into it, I kind of share with you the results of the poll. Most persons, of course, are business owners. 2 persons are working in government as well. Some, yeah, 46% of us are business owners. Again, in terms of the gender balance, I use that word balance loosely because, quite frankly, our women have outshone us men in our sessions. 79% of us attending are women and 21% men. Men, we need to do better than that. Again, the age group is between 35, and David, you can share the results of the poll with the team. 35 and 44 is the leading age group that we have this morning, between 35 and 44. And again, we have a fair distribution right across the various creative industries represented here this morning: literature and publishing, design, visual arts, advertising and marketing, fashion, and so on. So we have a fair cross-section, and we're excited about that. I want us, Marcus pointed out to me, our first presenter pointed out to me just now, or reminded me just now, that today is World Book and Copyright Day. And for the records, yes, we did time the session to coincide with this day. That's for the records. And truth is what really so, but for the records, we did so. And very importantly, Intellectual Property Week starts Sunday coming. So our first speaker will share with us. He is the Deputy Director and the Legal Counsel at JIPO, Intellectual Property Office. Dr. Goffe is an attorney at law with 19 years experience in the areas of law, including intellectual property, indigenous rights, criminal law, human rights law, entertainment, and media law. Marcus has been with JIPO since 2011 and is an adjunct lecturer at the University of the West Indies in the Faculty of Law. So without further ado, let me invite Marcus to share with us this morning. Marcus, the floor is yours.
All right, sir, thank you very much, Mr. Davis, and good morning to everyone. And happy World Book and Copyright Day. That we're coming to you here from our offices at JIPO. I hope everyone is keeping safe as we continue to proceed through this together. So I am gonna just go through some slides quickly. And so I hope everyone can see. Right, so let me just make sure that I can have it for everyone. All right, so I've been asked to talk about the intellectual property system in Jamaica. And of course, as Harold explained, JIPO is the government agency that is responsible for administering that IP system in Jamaica. So I will be speaking about the role of JIPO, how we see our role as a part of the government strategy to forward the creative industries. There's a lot happening here. And look at how we see the role of intellectual property in facilitating the advancement of the creative industries, right? So let me try again one time. I'm going to keep it simple. Right. We also looking at some of the relevant IP legislation, so some of what we do for IP Week, and some special projects that we have that we hope can advance your creative endeavors. So JIPO was established in 2001 by the JIPO Act, that's the legal framework that establishes JIPO. And as of February 1st, 2002, is a statutory body that falls under the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Culture, and Fisheries. That's MICAF. Also want to say big up and morning to Minister Green from MICAF. JIPO is primarily responsible for the IP laws of the country and to do public education, to work with interest groups in the private and public sector, and to advise the government on the updating of relevant laws and policies to advance IP in the country. We see the role of the government in the IP framework as having three prongs: being administrative, in terms of facilitating the ease of doing business for the creative sector; legislative, in terms of putting in place the framework, law and policy to facilitate advancement of the creative industries; and infrastructurally, to provide services, equipment, to be able to have the creative industries leveraged for international success. The mandate, as we see it, is to administer a modern, effective IP rights system that will act as a catalyst for economic growth and national development. We are currently one of the leading IP offices in the Caribbean, and our aim is to be the main reference point for IP rights protection and enforcement in the country. But ultimately, we see our efforts as lending itself to the creation of a robust ecosystem for IP in Jamaica that can have IP underpinning the success and the value added income generation that we need to see from our creative sector. In terms of the landscape for IP rights, right? We say the family of IP rights that we look at and work in is varied. We have the copyright sector. So copyright, of course, in those IP rights that relate to creative industries, singing, arts, film, drama, animation, music, broadcasting, etc. And that is a large sector that, of course, Jamaicans are involved in and well known for. Right? But we also have the industrial property side of things. And that relates to trademarks, right? Designs, patents, and geographical indications, different forms of IP rights that also have relevance to protect aspects of creativity in the country. Then we have traditional knowledge, which on the right-hand side of the screen is a relatively newer area, the protection of traditional music, traditional dance, traditional cultural expressions, etc., traditional medicine, and those areas. So IP rights are quite varied, and they're intended to be able to assist in facilitating creative endeavors across a broad spectrum of creativity. So when we look at the aspects of copyright, well, as the slides are moving a bit. So here, so let me go on to discuss copyright, since I know time is of the essence. So for copyright, as we said, is an area that seeks to relate to the creative sector, primarily in a large spectrum of the creative endeavors. Right? For copyright, the Copyright Act is the main governing piece of legislation. The Copyright Act guarantees to creative persons, to authors, that's what the Act calls it, the protection for their entire lifetime of the author, plus 95 years after his lifetime. He or she is entitled as the copyright owner to own and to earn and profit from the creation of their copyright works. So any film, poetry, song, dance, graphic work, artistic work, sculpturing, all aspects of really what would come in the cultural industries would likely be protectable by the copyright form of IP rights. Right? And so that is something that does not, under the law, require registration, but for sure, JIPO has a system of registration for copyright to at least provide persons with a tangible physical proof of registration, if and when it is that you may need that to negotiate a contract or to enforce your rights in the court or with the police, etc. In terms of looking at the design rights, design rights now look at the elements that flow in a creative product in how it is designed, its shape, its features, its pattern, materials used, the look and feel of it. All of those things are then protectable by what we call a design right registration. So persons who have come up with new fashions, clothes, shoes, can also apply to other products, where the shape, the look, the pattern of the product can all be a design right registration that, again, once it's registered, you as the designer have the legal protection for up to 15 years. And that gives you the right to stop anyone who is using a similar design as yours, from doing so. Right? Patents relate to the scientific area of creativity. So persons who are involved in science and technology, who are coming up with new inventions in that respect, whether chemistry, biochemistry, physics, engineering, etc. Those kinds of creative endeavors are protectable by patents. For a patent, the same principle that by virtue of registering your creative creation, you can then get the legal right to prevent other persons from using it, from copying it, from selling it without your permission. And so you have the legal tools to do so. And then for trademark is probably the most used IP right, certainly in terms of registration that we see at JIPO. And that one now covers a broad spectrum of trade. Any kind of industry or business, can use a trademark, which really is just your brand name, your look, your logo, etc., that you use to represent your business, represent your products, product line, etc., that distinguishes yours from other persons' own in the marketplace. And then finally, geographical indications relates to those unique Jamaican products that are primarily agricultural based, that have some unique characteristic attributable to where it's coming from. So our Blue Mountain coffee, our Trelawney yam, our St. Andrew scallion, etc., are all products that once we are able to identify what are those characteristics that make it unique from that locality, we can then protect it as such, and similarly prevent the use by persons that calling their products Jamaica this and Jamaica that, when we know it's nothing to do with Jamaica. You know? So really, the IP framework is there to protect and to incentivize creativity. Right? These legal frameworks are there for the enhancement of persons, that they can know that, you know, by virtue of spending the time and effort to create creative outcomes, you have the ability, you have the legal support and framework and system in place to be able to prevent the free riders, the counterfeiters, you know, the persons who may want to simply, you know, make a product off of your product without your permission. You have the legal tools to do so, and that is why JIPO is here. I just want to mention briefly, I'll try the slides again, that we have some special projects working on right now. So we have one is the TISCs, the Technology Innovation Support Centers, TISC, which we're working on with WIPO, the World IP Organization, to establish at tertiary institutions around the island, centers or locations where students and staff and members of the public can access information and data related to science and technology, designs and patents globally, to be able to see what's out there and apply and advance their own creative enterprises here in Jamaica, right? One of the main areas we see lacking is the access to this kind of data. So we want to make this data accessible, and persons who are working on new invention, creations and designs know what they're up against and know what's already been done outside of Jamaica. And then finally, we are also working on a project that relates to increasing the access to finance for creative sector enterprises, right? We recognize that the existing system, you know, primarily in terms of the financial sector, does not readily and so easily make funds available to the creative sector. And so we're working on a project with the IDB and the CDB to be able to develop IP valuation guidelines, which is a major part of the concern of the financial sector, and to create a IP collateralization framework in Jamaica, where person in the creative sector can go to a financial institution with your copyright, your trademark, your design, etc. On the strength of that, be able to get a loan, just as would someone who has a physical asset in their possession. So that's what we're working on at present, and hoping that that can really have some push to advance the progress for the creative sector nationally. So thanks very much, Mr. Davis. Thanks for your time all. And I'm here, of course, for the duration, for questions. Looking forward to it.
Thanks a lot, Marcus. And Marcus has kind of set the framework as to what intellectual property is, in case there's anyone in the room that didn't know what intellectual property was about. I'm sure you have heard, at least would have heard the terms copyright and trademark and geographical indication and industrial design. And if you need further clarity in terms of what that is and what that is about and how that applies to your business, then that's what we're here for. Marcus, can you stop sharing your screen so I can I can maneuver? Some persons, thank you. Some persons were asking about a funny noise. Are you still hearing that are you still hearing that?
What it is, Mr. Davis, a couple of mics were open, so I muted everybody.
Okay.
That's what it is, right?
Okay.
So what I'll ask is that as we go along, persons who are not presenting, you just mute your mic so that there won't be all that feedback. Right.
Okay, great, great. Okay, greetings and welcome, Minister Floyd Green. He is with us. Not going to present just yet. He's one of our panelists, but just acknowledging that he is here and with us. Our second presenter this morning is also an attorney at law. We should have called the session, we tied our own calling the session 3 attorneys and 1 entrepreneur instead of IP for creatives. But the legal profession is so critical to the intellectual property and intellectual property management. and the framework for intellectual property. So it's very important to hear from our attorneys as well. And this particular attorney, Cavelle Johnston, has been working in the field of intellectual property for a while and advising a number of clients where that is concerned. She joined Townsend, Whyte, and Porter and was promoted to partner in 2014. She's a graduate of Washington and Lee School of Law in Lexington, Virginia. But I think I'm looking at just a summary of her bio, and I'm thinking that perhaps the most salient part of her bio and what it is that we know of her, apart from her huge experience Am I back? Are you hearing me now?
Yes, you're back.
Okay, I'm back. I don't know what you missed, probably. You missed probably the best part. Anyhow, the good thing is that, let me introduce Cavelle without further ado, and Cavelle to share with us this morning. Cavelle?
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Welcome, welcome. Everybody, greetings out there. I know you're staying safe. I like the fact that we have the opportunity now to keep still a little and regroup. Sometimes in the midst of all the activities of business, we're saying, wow, there's some things I want to organize, but I don't have time. Hopefully now you have some time, and I want to share with you some tips to structure your business to be ready to do business globally. That's kind of one of my passions. I'm going to share my screen with you. Let us see if it's working. And let me click share. Awesome. Key things to consider when forging deals in a digital space. And that's kind of where we are in station to home now. But funny enough, at my desk, I see people globally trying to do business with creatives, music deals, documentaries, short films. People are trying to get their products on the market, looking for clearances, is it a drug or is it a food? Things have not gone still in the creative industry, I'm happy to report. What we want to do is to know what is our business plan. So first thing is, you have to think about the kind of structure you need for your business, whether you're gonna be registered as a partnership, you're going to be a limited liability company where if there's a problem and you're sued, it is the extent of the money that the business has as opposed to your personal liability. And that also impacts intellectual property rights. And I'll go down to that. If it is that you're going to operate in a digital space, you might want to consider owning the domain name. So approaching a private entity that has options and purchase a particular site. You don't want to start branding yourself in a particular way and then recognize that you're gonna run into trouble. The next thing is what Marcus talked about, which is figuring out what kind of intellectual property you have and set about registering it, unless it's a trade secret, which is a method that I'm gonna talk about later. Something that you don't want to put in writing. It is a secret. That's generally something that has to do with a recipe or a system that is going to create a consumable generally. So Marcus already put the buzzwords on the table: patents, discoveries, invention, something that is capable of manufacture, copyright, an artistic work, such as an illustration. Let me just minimize. Illustration, painting, or an animated character. And I love the fact that we have so many people in the room who are recognizing that they're in literature and publishing and design and visual arts when we looked at the poll. So I want you to listen carefully. Trademarks, we talked about that earlier. A mark with a word, picture, or representation in graphic form, and of course a design. It's a sleeping giant. It's a technique that creates anything that is unique. So when you think sandals, handbag designs, jewelry, those are all designs capable of being registered and capable of you're able to transact business with them. Let's break it down. If everybody loves my jewelry and they think I'm quite a status symbol, then I need to be considering, these ladies, what else do they wear? These gentlemen, what else do they wear? These children, what else do they wear? And start to think, maybe I should be in footwear. Maybe I should be in belts. And it doesn't matter if that's not a core area. I can always get a partner to work with. And so I'm going to go back to that. And then, of course, I touched on trade secrets. So let us get started. I want you to remember these words: licensing, co-branding, distribution deals, joint ventures. These are just some of the business relationships that you're going to engage with parties all over the world who want to use your brand. But before we get started, this is a brilliant time to do what I call putting your team together, your dream team. Producers, artist managers, royalty collection agencies, a licensing agent. That's another sleeping giant. Many international brands approach someone who is in the business of licensing their core brand in extensions that consumers expect to see you in. Just like I said, think of the jewelry, think of the brand extension into belts, think of the brand extension into footwear. You could contact a licensing agent and says, look, I have got some registered designs here. I've been successful in my collection so far, and I want to enter into some deals. That person's job is to look and hunt for you. So it doesn't matter whether you're stationed home right now. That is somebody you can contact in the internet age and get to work. You need to find an attorney, an accountant, and those people are going to help you structure your company. I talked about that a little bit earlier, because many people find themselves working in the easiest area, which is I am a solo trading as. You see that a lot, T/A. What that means is that you pay your taxes as an individual, and though you've got a registered entity that people can say on the books, okay, we know that you are real, this doesn't have any longevity, and it's not something that you can pass on to generations. And in fact, if you're sick and unable to sign a document, unless you've given signing privileges at a bank or something, you'll find that if you are not up and running, that business lives or dies with you. So it's a very dangerous format. So you need to sit with your lawyer and your tax accountant to say, okay, how am I going to structure my company? Because I'm now looking to go international. I'm looking to enter into some licensing deals. I'm looking to enter into some co-branding, meaning I'm going to use my brand together with another recognizable brand. If you're in food, you need to be looking to see who are going to be my quality control advisors, especially for health and beauty brands. You want to be talking to the Bureau of Standard. You want to be making sure that you are spoken to a lawyer and gotten familiar with the relevant legislation. And of course, public relations coordinators, because you want to assemble a team that's going to work on your behalf. And don't worry about fees. You need to talk, enter the arena and discuss the best options that are for you in pricing, because you don't want to be scurrying to find an agent when somebody knocks on your door to say, look, I like your 70s song and I'd like to include it in a Netflix documentary. You need to be able to say, okay, my producer is this, and I've got my own release to negotiate directly with you, and I can provide something in writing. Awesome. The key contracts then in the creative stage have to include a confidentiality agreement, because I think that's one of the main reasons why creatives keep quiet, because they're afraid to share their idea. I say share your idea, but make sure that the people that you're speaking to have a duty to keep your information confidential. Let me move quickly because I don't have a long time. The next thing is copyright. I've got to spend some time on it. You know, it's that time again. There's so many opportunities for the first creator, the person who actually draws, paints, writes, sings, performs. And you have to break those down. And when you are dealing with your producer, meaning say a record label, whoever is working on putting the pieces together, you've got to make sure that you're thinking down the road, okay, if there's a deal to be negotiated, am I gonna give them the right to negotiate entirely on my behalf? Or I'm gonna reserve the right, or we're gonna share it? Do they need to consult me? I hasten to say that many record labels and many producers in Jamaica, you know, especially those who have been around for 30 years, there are several that I call them defunct, meaning the persons aren't up and running, but all these they've recorded or released all these albums. If in this age where people like to do synchronization, meaning they just want a portion of your song or they want a portion of your script, if they can't find who owns the rights, they're not going to be able to do business with you. So I'm suggesting to persons now that if you've got something that you've recorded a long while ago and your label is not up and running, make contact with them, get a release, figure out how you're going to share the spoils, and make sure that you're in a position to negotiate on your own. So your business checklist is exactly what I discussed before. Who's your business partner? Who's your manager? What's the written proof that you have rights to negotiate? And how to do business quickly. I say, look at a royalty collection agency. This is what you really need to consider when you're thinking globally. United Kingdom, USA, Europe, Africa, to name a few. Some of the highly used names are our own JCAP, Jamaica Association of Composers, Authors and Publishers Limited, BMI, Broadcast, Music International, MCPS, Mechanical Copyright Protection Society, and PRS, Performing Rights Society. And membership may not even require a fee. There are some I know don't require a fee. Some have a one-time registration fee, and a portion of what they collect on your behalf is retained by the agency. It's very important to register, because if somebody wants to do business with you, especially if you've got something that you've already released, they need to know where to find you. And one of the things they do is to scout out with the royalty collection agencies, the popular ones, to say, okay, do you have this artist? Let me move down on my screen here. Publishers. It's very important to think about your publishing contracts. And when somebody approaches you with an idea, if you're a publisher, then you have to think down the road. Can I live up to their expectations? Am I gonna be able to do exactly what they want me to do? Nobody really knows that. So when you have to think about, okay, give them a time frame to exploit and promote the work, exercise good faith and commercial skill according to the prevailing knowledge of the trade, and not to make a secret profit. And of course, you've got to seek legal advice, because there are many nuances to a publishing contract. So if somebody approaches you, you have to think, okay, let me see what you are proposing that I sign, and let me pass it by an attorney or some other seasoned professional, like a management company. We have touched on designs, and I'm so excited that we have with us someone who has been blazing the trail in business in Jamaica, Reve Jewellery. And I'm so pleased that they have so many designs registered and are prime now for brand extensions. And I'm waiting to hear the excellent news. I wanted to show you another example of what an industrial design looks like. Look at those sandals, those flowers, all of that stuff is protected can be protected under the Design Act. And so it's something to consider. And I know that Teasea will speak more about that. But you want to make sure that you're poised to have a collection. You don't want to do something, somebody copies it, and then you're struggling now to go back and forth with them to say, it's my idea, or I'm the one who came up with it first. We touch a lot on trademark. What's a trademark? And why we go into the business of registering it. And it's exactly what I said before, to manage other innocent creators, because other people may innocently create the same thing. So what you're doing is saying you're first. And that gives you legal redress if somebody now decides deliberately or not deliberately to use your mark, and you get to tell them to stop. Now, if you're not registered, yes, there is the common law right to stop people from palming or passing off your work, but that is going to be a little bit harder to prove and will take you a little longer through the court system. My favorite subject is the licensing agreement, because that is how we are going to transition Jamaica into a first world system where creatives are now putting their work in a forum they've already protected it, and are now saying, come shop with me. The definition of a licensing agreement is where you're giving rights to reproduce and use and distribute a product in a particular territory for a particular length of time, and you give specifics of the usage. A good example will be Disney characters. You notice you see them on children's bedding, children's stationery, just everything children. That's because they have inked hundreds of licensing agreements all over the world. And in fact, the Walt Disney brand is the #1 license merchandise brand in the entire world. Walt Disney. That's because generations after those characters continue to inspire people, and people want to surround themselves with that brand. That's how you need to see your brand. Whatever it is you're doing, if you're an illustrator, if you're an artist, begin to see how you can paint the world with product. That's when a licensing agreement becomes live, because you are now able to get license fees, royalty fees, and you're now able to say, okay, if you're not doing what I want you to do, or I don't think you're being profitable, I have some terms in here that allow me to wind down our relationship or entirely revoke it. And I have indemnity if you're doing something that is not profitable and is creating an issue in the business landscape. These kinds of situations do arise. So even if you're friends with the person or everything starts out well, and you consider there's an unequal balance of power in that, they are the ones with the money putting the product to market, etc., you still have to negotiate. Even if you feel like you're in a weak position, still negotiate. I'm wrapping up. Royalty agreements, calculating the owner's compensation. And I'll see if I can share the slide with persons who want after, if there is a request. That's a payment that's generally tied to the actual usage of the creative work in commerce. So it's different from the licensing fee. And it's a compensation scheme to reflect rate and the basic standard of accounting. And that's how some people get confused, because they enter into some deals that says, well, unless you make a profit, I don't get anything. I generally say you have to be careful about that. You want to link it to units of product. You know, once something is manufactured, you want to be in consideration and in line to benefit. So those are things that you have to work out with your individual attorney or manager, business manager, to make sure that you ink something that is suitable. So my last slide will be your homework. Things to consider: register a business company partnership at the registrar of companies after consultation. Find the key business partners you need to extend your brand. Think of Disney and painting the town with what you do, how you're gonna make a profit from it. And of course, register. Whether you're going to use the poor man's copyright option, which is to mail, well, that works for designs, I must say, designs and matters that concern copyright. So if you've written something, you have a song, that sort of a thing, a music sheet, you can actually mail a copy of it to yourself, have that unopened and sealed, and there's proof of the sealing, so that if there's an issue, you can say, I was first. But when it comes to trademark, formal registration is a must. So do your homework and let's continue the discussion. I hope I've been of some assistance, and I'm available for questions.
All right, great, Cavelle. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to, Cavelle spoke about her. Her name is Teasea Bennett, and she is the co-founder of Reve Jewellery. Now everybody, co-founder and CEO of Reve Jewellery. Now everybody knows Reve Jewellery, or should know Reve Jewellery. They do fantastic jewelry out of the box, and they have, we are proud to say that they are one of JBDC's babies, having worked with us many years ago. Teasea wants to share with us this morning because she has first-hand experience in how intellectual property has helped her business to promulgate and move forward. And before I ask Teasea to start sharing with us, I want to mention that congratulations are still in order because she is a new mother. So, and she's doing very well, and she's very proud of that. So, Teasea, your turn.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. And of course, JBDC is like such an important organization to us. So thank you so much for being a part of it. So I don't have any fancy slides or all these things to share. What I do have is practical information and knowledge in terms of how we approach building, and still actually I'm in the process of building our IP. Now, Marcus and Cavelle really, they laid the foundation, and I was even here taking notes and learning myself. And as an entrepreneur, we have taken our time, and I must point out that having a business support organization in your corner is a very big and important thing. So for us, JBDC was instrumental in helping to direct us in, you know, putting us on the path in terms of the things that we need to look at if we were serious about business. Now, Reve Jewellery and Accessories, which I co-founded with my brother, one of our vision is to be a company that is here even long after we're gone. So if we have companies, I remember living in France, and the first time it struck me as a young person there, where companies such as Louis Vuitton have been around since the 18th century. And even though I was there on a completely different path, I was really fascinated and taken back by that, and I became even more in love with the brand. And that was me not even knowing that I was going to be an entrepreneur in the fashion industry, or the jewelry industry to be specific. And I became fascinated, like, what really have these companies done that they have been able to be such a brand that people will pay, maybe use their entire paycheck to own one of the pieces from this company. And there are a lot of companies, this is from serving kings and queens from the 18th century, 1800, whatever, and they're still around, and a very high-end brand that everybody wants, and of course knocks off. And this is where IP is so important. Now, I found that, Cavelle just mentioned it, and it's a very important thing. One of the greatest information, sound advice anyone gave me when we just came up with the concept of Reve. And this is why it's so good to have mentors and to be able to reach out to persons who can point you in the right direction. Luckily for me, we had a family friend who said to me, and I'll just use his words, they weren't mine. He says, cover your butt before you expose it. Another person said to me that it's very important to find a business support organization and see how they can best inform you. And that's how our relationship with JBDC started. Back in those early days. So one of the first important things I like to point out to the many entrepreneurs right here now is no one can really decide for you where you're at. You should know where you're at. You should know where your finances are, your access to finances, what you can afford. But one of the best advice I would personally give is that you need to consider, as Cavelle just emphasized, she had so many golden points. You need to formalize your organization. Now, there are many different types of registration, or what should I say, legal standing for the company. And each one has its own pros and cons. For my personal experience with my brother, with Dwayne and I, is that we decided to start off as a partnership, which is a pretty similar structure to a sole trader, until we got our brand and got enough, we're turning over enough monies to now move to a limited liability, where we could then, the demands of a limited company, we could meet that. And we could understand that after being in business for a longer time. But from the get-go, one of the most important things we did was to link up with the Jamaica Intellectual Property, and Marcus, we've been coming there forever, right? To find out about what kind of IP rights we needed and what was applicable to our company. And the staff and management there is just amazing. They will walk through with you, sit down, and they will break down. You can go onto the website and see what classes you fall into. You can call them up. Trust me, they will help you sort that out. But it's very, very important to look at these different structures and see what is applicable to you. Now, Marcus gave some beautiful slides, which I saw a couple of participants asking for it to be shared. I'm sure JBDC will enable that. But for us, one of the important things I wanted to point out as well is, and Cavelle, I'm so happy Cavelle spoke about it. Walt Disney, the #1 branded company in the world. Now, it's important that you understand, and maybe I'm going to be a devil's advocate here, but this company has been long-standing, they've been there forever, is not registered in every country. However, because their brand is so well established, if someone should violate that, you will feel the repercussions. So, and this is because companies like this understand the importance of IP. And so you need to sit down and start researching what companies you want to start exporting to. Start with your home country, of course. Start with JIPO. Start with the business support organizations such as JBDC. Go out, get the information, and start building your IP portfolio. It is very important. One of the things that really I am so passionate about, persons are always confused, like, what is your role in Reve? Because I don't make anything, I just wear them. My very talented brother is so prolific, and we had to look at different ways to layer how we're going to be protecting his designs, and you can use several different ways to do this depending on what industry you're in. So for us in the fashion industry, specifically jewelry and accessories, we use Trademark, which is basically covering our logos, which is a brand and mark. We also ensure that every piece of jewelry has the Reve brand in it, because this is our distinct mark. So if someone else tries to knock this off, before we even invested in having this kind of tool, which enables us to mark each of our pieces, I have had customers who return their things and said, listen, I know that you guys have the Reve in there now, I need my thing to be embossed because I'm not wearing any counterfeit thing. This is how serious people are about branding. And that is so, and this is the power of branding, and how increase the value and the way you're perceived in the market. And this is how you really stand out from everyone else. So trademarks, which is, as Marcus said, one of the most commonly used of the IP instruments, is one way to go about it. And that's one thing I would definitely recommend as a first step even. As you dive into it more, as a in the fashion industry, we've also used what we call, well, maybe I'm using the wrong terms, but I call poor man copyright, which is mostly popular with, I guess, musicians and authors and so on. But for me, because as I mentioned, Dwayne makes so many different designs, even before we take them to the market, I want to at least have some kind of protection and some proof that we've started and this is ours, this is our innovation. So what we've done is to take photos or have the illustrations of the designs and register mail it back to us, to our address. When these come back, you do not open it and you store these away somewhere safe. Because if it comes to, you know, if something happens where you need to prove that this is your original design, this is just a way, it's one of the ways that you can show that this is your design. It's highly recommended that you use other proper methods. But for example, if Dwayne is going to be producing 100 designs, and we're not going to be spending the money to trademark all of them because that does add up. And as a micro business, your resources, you want to be able to do other things in your operations. So what we've done is that we'll take certain products to the market, see how the market responds to it, and then we'll push in that direction in terms of investing in what we call different techniques. One of them is like, which falls under the IP, is design, industrial design, sorry. What this means is that, for example, we're the only ones who can fabricate a design like this, right? No one else can manufacture it because we are manufacturers. We literally make this ourselves. And this is a technique in terms of layering, like an onion, as you can imagine that, using different methods and ways of protecting and showing the originality and authenticity of your company. What I do hope to see in Jamaica, and you know, hopefully the minister can churn in here, is to see where Jamaica will eventually get to the place where the Madrid Protocol, for example, where and I believe Antigua is the only Caribbean or CARICOM island who has this currently, where once your item is registered in Jamaica, it is, you know, all over, it's worldwide, it's accepted worldwide. And we're waiting for those policies and new laws to be passed and so on. Another thing that I'm hoping to see soon, because Jamaica, we're full of creatives and talent, is things like government intervention to prevent knockoffs from entering the country. For example, the United States is very, very good at this, right? I've read case studies where persons would knock off a jewelry design, and when it gets to the point of entry, it is stopped right there at customs before entering the country. And this is very important because, you know, the knockoff industry, the counterfeit industry, especially in fashion, is a multi-billion-dollar industry in terms, and people lose crazy money from other persons using people's designs. And I'm sure you guys have seen, for example, Bridget sandals, like very cheap versions of it, or different designs or takes or spins on it from all over the place, being brought in by and being sold in wholesales and all over the place. And that's an example of a breach and where persons are losing because they have knockoffs and cheaper brands being produced. Another important thing that I wanted to point out, as I said, because IP is so costly, you need to really sit down, think about where you want to start exporting your products, especially if you have an e-commerce website. You know, start using analytics to see where and who is buying most of your things, and see how you can start planning to get protection in these countries. So for example, with our company, our website is currently down, but we do export within the region. We export a lot to the US and Canada and so on. And so we have our IP in about 22 different European countries, and this took a while to get there, but we planned and did that. We also have it in Trinidad and Tobago and so on, and we're still working on other ones. So hopefully these are some of the information, or some of, well, the hands-on approach or experience can be helpful to somebody else here. If you have any questions, in regards to how we went about it or what we're doing currently and so on. I'll be happy to answer. Thank you again for this platform and talk soon.
Thank you, Teasea. Great stuff. And the final panelist that we have is none other than the Honorable Minister, Minister Floyd Green, who is the Minister of State in MICAF, Minister of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture, and Fisheries. Minister really needs no introduction, just to say that he has been championing our creative industries for a while, from ever since, even before he became the minister with responsibility. And also he has been championing the whole business of the ecosystem for innovation and facilitating innovation in our ecosystem. And I think that's very important. So I'm gonna, and he's also an attorney at law. So that is, hence he makes up the third attorney on the panel. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Minister Floyd Green to speak with us now. Minister. Yes, Minister, you're on.
We're not hearing you very well, Minister. The mic, something seems to be wrong with your mic.
Right? Even the big players, remember, up to the last week, we had changed and said, they're not saying that bad. And I tell you, one of these people said, well, we don't know what it could be. And they're really not that bad. And they are saying, remember, they told the CV, that's never happened. The CV come in this morning to board. We never know that the workers are work. I remember, we never say it was that bad. Because we know what we can supply and what we can't supply.
I don't think the minister knows that he's on.
I don't think so either.
Perhaps we could call him, because I think you're having another meeting and we've gone live on him.
Yeah.
Maybe you could mute him. You could mute him because it seems to be a business meeting.
All right, I've muted him, Mr. Davis. See if you can reach him and let him know that he's on.
I'm gonna call him, but in the meantime, if we could take a couple questions to the existing panelists.
Mila, you are first. Go ahead with your question.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I caught the end part of Cavelle's presentation, and I just have a question to ask. Well, two, but the first one is in regard to the large operations of the performing arts within our creative industries in Jamaica, because I have experienced it as well, where informal agreements are ingrained into the DNA of the industries. So when a creator tries to introduce and enforce a contract or some kind of contractual agreement, often it's rejected, or if it's signed, it's not honored. It's happened to me a number of times. How then does the creative get to protect work that's made and enforce licensing, especially use for a certain amount of time, if the older operators, for example, dance companies, music studios, and even some musicians themselves refuse to operate in a context of accountability? Well, that's the first question.
All right, so who's that question? Who's going to take the question for us?
Well, it was particularly for Cavelle, because that's who I had heard, but I mean, if there's anybody who can speak to it for me.
I don't know if Marcus, I'm not seeing him. But let me start by saying, one, if it is that you are going into some sort of an arrangement with a third party, it's good to have discussions. Just don't sign anything, don't promise anything. And then have on tap somebody who's senior in the industry who can assist you in speaking. So you have to have a mentor. That's what I recommend. A mentor first, that if somebody starts speaking to you, you can say, okay, but I want to introduce so-and-so to the discussion so that a more senior person is there that can take away some of the nerves that you have and the feeling that you have that the scales are not balanced. Sometimes it's in your mind though, because if people seriously want your talent and they know you're seriously not going to give it away, because if you give it away, you're not getting anything in the same breath. So it makes no sense. The exposure is perhaps not even worth it. So we've got to get the protection first. So I would say plan and know in advance who are the persons that you believe are respected, that when you say, okay, I'd like to discuss it with so-and-so, you get a little bit more what I call breathing room, introduce them to the discussion. Also, people think having an attorney is the most expensive thing in the world. It's not. And so it's a very good thing to have a discussion with an attorney, just a consultation before you go into these discussions to know how far you can go, because not everything needs a formal 10-page contract. Sometimes a signed document with 3 paragraphs is sufficient, depending on what it's saying. So you can know what standard form contracts look like. So if in case you have to deal with a standard form contract, it's not the first time you're seeing it. I think the biggest problem is that you have no idea what's good for you and you have no idea what's bad for you. And so you get thrown off in a meeting. The next point is enforceability. When you need something enforced, then you have to seek the long arm of the law to assist you. So you don't give up hope. If somebody has signed something and agreed to it, what you need to do is get legal advice. And that's why I really recommend people start joining with royalty collection agencies, because a lot of that strain, the enforcement of business contracts on the profit side of it, you can get that assistance. Also, depending on where you are in the stage of the game in the performing arts, it is also time to consider a manager. I'm not sure if I fully answered your question, but what I wanted to take away from the discussion and for others listening is that getting an attorney is not as difficult as it may be deemed. And 2, contracts don't have to be as difficult as people make them seem, you know, several clauses and heretofores and boilerplate and all of that. Normal, easy, everyday language can suffice. So the discussion is not as intimidating. And thirdly, do not give away your rights because you believe that you are weak. Because at the end of the day, you're getting nothing. And that's why there are so many stories of people who have signed away their rights to their songs and are walking poor on the streets and have not made a cent from it because they felt weak. So feeling weak is how everybody feels. We all start there, and then we come to a way, we work out a way that we're gonna be able to negotiate. We call for people who have a little bit more strength, you know, and you have a great resource in the Jamaica Business Development Corporation to have, you know, to say, all right, I'm going to a meeting and I need some guidance. They can point you in the right direction. I hope I've been of some assistance.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Cavelle. Marcus, you want to add anything to that, or are we good? Or should I ask Neil if that response was okay?
The response was okay and it's appreciated. However, what I'd like to say also, particularly when we are getting advice as creatives from those who are on the legal side of things and who are on the business side of things, I believe that a lot of times the solutions proposed are not necessarily working in tandem with considering the lay of the land in terms of the way people do work. Creatives work, not necessarily, I wouldn't say not with a business head, that's not true, with a different kind of business head. Creative business is different. Sometimes a discussion is an artistic director saying, you know, I'd actually like for you to work on something. Yeah? And you meet creatively first in your heads. I have tried before where I have tried to be legal about it before with a very informal contract that came off like a letter, and it was signed, and still the full amount that was signed to was not paid. And the running down is not worth it. it's a principle of the thing. And if you're going to spend the time running down, you will soon become blacklisted in your small industry. So there is a balance that you have to strike because of the ways that contracts, by mouth, by interest, by somebody saying they'd like you to do something, by you saying you'd like to do something with a larger established organization. Some of the people who you are suggesting we go to as mentors, and I'm a mentor myself because I've been in it for a while, are the same ones who will not answer your call when they owe you 50% of your money. So what I have done, for example, is I have contracts that state when I'm supposed to be paid 25%. And on the finishing of this particular thing, then I'm paid 50%. Because of who I am in the industry now, it is treated differently. But those who are coming up, unfortunately, don't have the same kind of, and I'm going to say luxury, because people don't necessarily believe in them. So they think that the exposure that they're getting from choreographing on this artist or this company should be enough, when it is really not enough. So what I'm suggesting is that there is a larger thing with the way in which we have been groomed, grown to operate and to understand within, particularly the dance industry. That's my industry, but I've heard of it in music industry as well. People have gone on tour and have agreed to get a certain amount of money, and in the middle of the tour they don't get it, and this is musicians.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So there's something ingrained in the, when I said DNA, I was very serious in the DNA, because the DNA is different from what operates on paper. The DNA is different from what the business of the thing needs, and so the creatives almost always get caught in the gap and fall through the hole. So that's what I'm saying. I appreciate it, but in terms of really sitting to understand what it is, not that we have to go to a particular model that already exists. We have to create a model for our creative industries, and each of the components are different as well. The way the dance community operates is not the way the music community operates necessarily. It's not the way the visual arts community operates necessarily either. It's different products and different processes, different, because it's relationships, you know. At the end of the day, if you have somebody who was a mentor who wants you to choreograph on their work, that's a big deal. On their computer, that's a big deal. And you expect them to act a certain kind of way, and you realize they're not acting a certain kind of way. Taking a lawyer to them could blacklist you in that industry. So it's really,
I think I'm agreeing with what you're saying in general. And at the very beginning of our session this morning, I was saying that, I never said it in a way in which you said it just now. But what I was saying is that creatives in general and what we do, it tends to leave us vulnerable in many instances to exploitations, even from our peers, including our peers, and perhaps almost especially from our peers. I mean, I'm in the music industry, as you know, I'm familiar with it. Even just the process of, say, collaborating creatively in a studio. Sometimes the creative side of your brain just kind of just wants to make this tune, you know, and pull in whichever friend or brethren or partnerships are that you know can make it. And sometimes, and very often, the legal considerations, the structuring considerations get put back burner. That's why it's very important for us as creatives to operate with a team around. A team that, and when you have somebody, and it's a team, sometimes it sounds like it's a huge number of persons. You need to have in the room, if you are not so inclined, I mean most musicians and creatives like yourself over time have learned, you know, how to deal with it. But if you are not so inclined, you need to have somebody in the room that is so inclined.
Very true.
So that the business part of the deal gets dealt with and gets put out of the way. So you don't have to deal with that. So you can focus on the creative part of it. And then if we combine that with this structuring and setting your parameters for intellectual property protection and the trust element that creatives tend to sometimes don't have for good reason. For good reason sometimes. But if you combine that with that, then I think we're better off still. So I'm agreeing with you. And thank you for that comment. We're going to move on.
Thank you both.
Yeah, man. I mean, I really appreciate it. I see two hands, Carrie and
Sana rules, and there's also questions in the chat, but we can't.
Right.
I'm gonna ask if we can take those after the minister makes his presentation.
Right. So I'm gonna ask the minister now to. So
Kerry and Sana, I'll make a note and keep you in mind for the next question and answer segment.
Right. So I'm gonna ask the minister now to give his contribution. Minister.
Good morning, everybody. Apologies, I was here. But then I was called into an urgent meeting, and I have returned and realized that you have gotten full into your question and answer segment. So I think it may be best if we allow those questions, and if there's anything that I share, just to say from a policy perspective, so I'll try just to do this in 1 or 2 minutes. But from a policy perspective, from Micah, from where I sit, we're really placing renewed focus and emphasis on our intellectual property systems. Coming to the ministry, being given charge of agencies like JIPO, and reflecting on some of the deficiencies and weaknesses that we've had in the past, I think our lack of focus on intellectual property has been one of our downfalls. The reality is that we are an immensely creative society, really talented people, and the only way to really monetize that is through proper intellectual systems and through an understanding, especially by the key players across the creative industries, that intellectual property is important, and that at every step of the way, your ideas, your knowledge, your expressions need to be protected. So part of what we have been trying to do from a government perspective is to update and enhance our intellectual property framework. So for a very long time, we've been speaking about our Patent Act, when people are innovative, when people come up with new inventions, being able to adequately protect that. And you may have heard before, but our Patent Act was from the 1800s. And one of the big things that we were able to do last year was to pass a brand new Patent Act. And we now have the most modern patent registration system in the Caribbean. And again, we do that in the hope that those of us who invent, those of us who innovate, will utilize our patent system. I would say the next big ticket item that we're working on and that we want to have done post-haste, should have been done before, is to ensure that we put in place the Madrid Protocol. And the Madrid Protocol is to ensure that when you do your registrations for trademarks and things of that nature here in Jamaica, it can have worldwide impact. And again, we've had some delays in adopting the system, but I think we've now passed that. And my hope is that regardless of what is happening now with COVID, I can't think of a better time than now to get that protocol passed and brought through its various stages. So I know Gavin is online, and my intention is that while we all work from home, is to have the Madrid Protocol done and brought to the fore. So the other thing that I think is very, very important, especially for creatives who are in things like agro-processing and in various industries, that is to ensure you get yourself familiar with the system of geographic indicators and how we can utilize that and how you can utilize that and how you can help us in the advocacy and establishing those geographic indicators for various products. Again, we believe that Jamaica is really special, and the things that we grow here, the things that we're able to develop here, all have a specialness that needs to be protected. We've been able to do that with our Blue Mountain coffee. We've been able to do that with Jamaica rum. And we're really looking to see how we can do that in relation to our cannabis industry. So exciting time, part of what we really want to do, and I'm saying to the team, use this time now where we have captive audiences across our virtual space, is to just continue to promote IP, continue to point people in the direction of JIPO, and let us continue to have more of our creatives embrace and utilize those systems. So those are my few cents. I will be here for the questions, and if needs be, clearly I will answer as deemed appropriate, but you have a really good panel here, so let's see.
All right, thanks a lot, Minister. You said Gavin Goffe is actually Marcus. Gavin.
I said, sorry, Marcus, forgive me. Please, and don't tell Gavin.
Right?
You might immediately ask for a salary increase, Minister. So, Sansia, over to you in terms of the questions.
Okay, there is a question in chat from Sean Melbourne. The relevant person can take this. As a graphic artist, how does one protect themselves with retailing new designs online on an ongoing basis? Cavelle, you can probably take that one.
Or Marcus.
I'm not seeing Marcus right now. I'm not sure. He's online.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, you're there. You're there. Okay, I'm
Yeah,
not.
man.
Okay, all right, Marcus, you can take that one, please.
Sure. How does one protect themselves retailing new designs online on an ongoing basis? Right. So, so Teasea gave the perfect answer, actually, in terms of what is her practice, which is to use the, as she called it, poor man's copyright system. She mails, the new designs to herself and keeps them unopened when they're received that way. She does that, she said, because there's so many that her brother does that, they probably wouldn't want to register all. But I mean, so there are options you have. You can do that, which is what Teasea said that she does. You can also choose to register them here at JIPO before you put them online. So at present, the fee to register designs is $1,500, just that only. But as the minister said, the new law was passed recently. It's not yet enforced. Will be enforced very soon. And so you probably have around a few weeks, I would say, to get to JIPO, right? Remotely, that is, pay the $1,500 to get your designs registered for 15 years validity. And apart from that, you can also choose to protect them to our copyright system of registration as well, which you have here at JIPO, which would cost a bit more, about $2,000 to register each design as a copyright work.
All right, thanks, Marcus. So I think the story is that you have a few weeks to get to JIPO before the new law comes into effect. And I also suspect that change of price might come with that as well. So,
correct.
Sansia?
Okay, next person, Carrie-Ann Henry. I'm gonna unmute your mic and you go ahead and ask your question. Carrie-Ann, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, go ahead.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much so far to all the panelists and to JBDC for hosting as usual. I wanted to touch back on something that Neela had said as well. I'm very happy that she got the opportunity to expand a bit because the various industries are different. And so it is important to understand the nuances. However, one of the things that you also touched on, Harold, in your response was the fact that you need a team of persons. And so each person having their various roles. Now, what is obvious and what has to be different, and is for us to now decide how we can put such systems in place, is a process where even from the get-go, and yes, creatives, sometimes it feels like it will crush the process, but even from the get-go, there's a standard agreement in place from even the creative process. What does that mean? At the end of that creative process, who, and I don't like to use the owns what, but if Jamaica, where we are heading and where we want to head, Vision 2030, everything that is embodied in that, we have to change our mindset and our approach of how we are doing things. Not to remove the creativity, but to really give it the structure and the business that is needed so that everyone benefits and can create a sustainable life from it. Far too long, the artists have not been able to kind of wrap around that and do it in a constructive way that it is beneficial on all fronts. So I know JBDC has launched a number of small business development centers. So I believe that artists need to be able to access these, but even within these centers, there needs to be the relevant personnel that can look at all the various sides of the art and give that person that team that is needed. Minister, I'm very happy to hear that the Madrid Protocol is coming on stream. It was mentioned earlier by Teasea as well. And I would love to know not putting you in a spot, but you know, if you have an idea of how soon that would be, because I tell you something, another thing, and I'll wrap up with this aspect of it. And it's a question as well as a thought for us to think about. Cultural appropriation. Jamaica has been suffering from that for years. And we have to have systems and things in place that protect and educate us against this cultural appropriation. Creatives, it's all about sharing, and you create even more things when you share, but there's a difference. And so we have to, I believe that even in our education system, from early, there needs to be curriculum that's put in place that creates that kind of sensibility and awareness for trade, for IPs, for, you know, an understanding of that from curriculum that goes from basic school, primary school, right throughout the education system, so that by the time they get to starting their business, they're ready.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Carrie, and before you go, I think you need to share with the group a little bit about who you are and where you're from.
Oh,
please.
Okay. My apologies. I'm an introvert, extrovert artist, you know, so I like to also stay a little bit incognito sometimes.
Yes, I know,
Right.
but you need to.
So my name is Carrie Ann Henry. I work at the Endemanic College of the Visual and Performing Arts in administration and resource development. I recently had the pleasure of working with the JBDC on signing an MOU for a small business development center, specifically earmarked for the creative and cultural industries. And so something that we at the college, and just personally, I feel very passionate about, as well as the JBDC. So we are looking forward to doing that. I am also a dancer, choreographer.
Exactly.
I believe that after, you understand?
Right.
Local government first. With the National Dance Theatre Company. And I have really had the pleasure of representing Jamaica on a number of platforms globally. I was even with Walt Disney. I heard Disney came up before the Lion King musical on the West End in the UK, which it was choreographed by a Jamaican, Garth Pagan. And so lots of conversations to be held in that, even it as a business, or you look at the various aspects. They use a lot of technology that we see in Carnival, in Trinidad. Not saying that's where they got it from, but I'm just saying that we see so many things from our Caribbean space coming out on these big blockbuster level productions, and we have our own Jamaicans participating in them. So, you know, we need to kind of just think about that, harness that, and run with it.
All right, thanks, Carrie. Minister, you wanted to respond based on what Carrie was asking? She was asking Madrid and when.
Yeah, so Madrid protocol. In terms of when, boy, I'm gonna ask Marcus, right? If it was up to me yesterday, last month, but I know my last conversation with the team from JIPO and the ministry team here, we were on the final. If you understand the process of bringing these things to fruition across government, is especially legal documents, is that it goes through a number of reviews, including the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, our legal team here, JIPO, and we've been through, I would say, all of the stages now. So we're really on the final stage, but I'll ask Marcus if he can provide a little update on that. And I agree in relation to the incorporation of some of these principles from the earliest stages. Definitely, I think we have to formulate a closer relationship through our SBDC centers, our small business development centers, with the JIPO in terms of ensuring that our creatives can come into that space. I think Edna Manley clearly is a great start for that in terms of the SBDC that we have now, and ensuring that we have some time allotted, Harold, to have JIPO come in and speak with our creatives there, and in a very practical one-on-one way, right? So that they can move into the various forms of registration that is needed. I definitely believe that we have to look earlier into our school curriculum. Clearly, one of the overall challenges that we have is how the creative industry is treated as a secondary form of activity in our school curriculum. So as you know, in schools, yeah, it's really seen as an extracurricular activity, nothing to be taken too seriously. And as such, it's only until people who are really have to be strong personas when they finish secondary schools that they go to Ednaman and decide that they really want to pursue professional creative life in a formal, structured way. So that's something that we have to work on. And that's definitely a loophole. But I do believe we can find parts of the curriculum to really start introduce principles of protecting your intellectual property in the very early stages. That would help. So I'll have those discussions with the Ministry of Education and to see how can we creatively do that.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much, Minister. I agree with you. Marcus, you wanted to comment on what Minister asked you to comment?
Sure. So yes, the manual protocol. So we have done the amendments. We've drafted the amendments to the Trademarks Act, which were what we were waiting on to move towards Madrid. And they are now at present being reviewed to go to the cabinet for that final approval from cabinet to then go to Parliament. So it's well advanced. Actually, I mean, we have it on our work plan for this year. We hope that we can still have that accomplished despite the current COVID challenges. But it is well advanced, and we expect it to be passed within this financial year.
All right, cool. Thanks, Marcus. Sansia?
Yes, there's a question in the chat from Danny and Thomas for the minister. As a freelance writer, there does not seem to be consideration given to individuals operating as sole traders. There seems to be more incentives given to creatives who manage production. She went on to say that she was encouraged by Minister Grange to join the registry as a writer, but the forms that she submitted were very discouraging. So how will the government revise the registry, I suppose, to promote individuals who may not be working with production companies, but who need support, for example, loans? You got the question, Minister?
Yeah, good question. And I look into it clearly. We do realize that each part of the creative industry has its own sort of nuance. I will sit with Minister Grange and her team and see what may be the challenges. And clearly, if you could, I'm going to give you my email, so if you could send me specifically some of the challenges you faced in registering for the registry, we can see how we can update the registry to make it serve all creatives better. Clearly, we believe we're trying to serve all our creative industry. It's a diverse set, as we all know, and we have to continuously evolve, look at the protocols we put in place, look at the needs of each segment of that industry, and see how that works. So what I would suggest, F.O. Green, I'll probably type it in the chat. Yeah, probably that's better. I'll type it in the chat so that you can send me an email, highlight the particular difficulty that you came across, and then we'll see what we can do in terms of the updated registry. We really want to develop models that serve all the creatives. I think part of the challenge that we've had is, as I've said, when I came to the Ministry of Industry, for a very long time, we never treated the creative industry like an industry. So our ministry never placed as much emphasis as it needed, especially to look at the other things that you would look at for entrepreneurs in terms of loans, in terms of incentives, things of that nature. I think there's a shift in tide, but we still have more work to be done. We do hope that all creatives, regardless of whether you're a sole trader or not, that you have registered with the company's office. I think one of the challenges that we still have is that when you count small businesses, because a number of our creatives don't register as a business, they're oftentimes not counted in the mix, and that is a challenge. So as you know, we're doing a mapping exercise now. We have a survey out in terms of some of the challenges. And we expect when that work is done with the British Council, we'll have a better feel of the industry. But my hope is that everybody has registered, does have a certificate of either business name registration or company registration. It's very, very important. And
Absolutely.
when that happens, the reality is that whether you're a creative company, even if you're one person in that creative company, once you have that legal company covering, then all the things that apply to companies apply to you, right? So we need to get our creatives, ensure that they have that covering of a registered entity. So that's very, very important. So if there are persons who are in this creative space who are not yet registered, part of my advice would be, please go out and register.
Can I just chime in with what the minister just said? I was going to I'm happy that he spent the time to emphasize that, because in my industry, I find that I was really blown away with starting this company. We've been in operation since 2006 and became that in 2006 to 2009, we were like a partnership, and then we switched to become a limited liability in 2009. And we've come into this business seeing people who have been in here longer than we've been, and they're still not registered. And I think I think there's work to be done, because a lot of Jamaicans, because they don't understand, they're not educated, they don't know, like what the Bible says, seek and you shall find, ask and it shall be answered. Like if you go to the right BSOs, I keep saying that, business support organizations such as JBDC, or speak to other people in business, they will point you in the direction. So go to the company's registry office in New Kingston and register your business. It's very, very, no one will look at you seriously until you're formalized. So as an entrepreneur, I'm just even going to emphasize more and, back up what the minister is saying, go and register. So even if you're a freelance or whatever, register your business, become formal. There's pros and cons, but educate yourself on this and meet what is required by the government to do so. And just take your time and learn. Another thing I wanted to point out, because Neela and Harold spoke about it, was teamwork. Like if you're creative and you're not necessarily good at something, and I think that has been a very important part of our success in our company, is my brother's a creative, and I thoroughly love, like my brother wouldn't sit and do this right now. I thoroughly love it. So I become that part without even realizing that I was that person that ensured that there are certain standards you stand for the creative that you're representing, which is you have to stand for integrity, know what it is, the qualities that your company or your branding is so important in terms of what you want to portray into the business and how you want people to look at you and how you want them to deal with you, and put your foot down and stand firm in those things.
Yeah, thanks, Teasea. I think as we have been saying constantly, it's very important for us as creatives to have an entrepreneurial kind of mindset, to understand that. That doesn't mean, and we keep on saying, that doesn't mean that we're expecting you to become the accountant or the lawyer or whatever, the business expert necessarily. But you need to understand, if you're going to be in business and be successful in business, you need to understand what it takes to be successful in business. So therefore, you need to understand the need, for instance, to keep good records, to keep good books. You need to understand the need for intellectual property protection and leveraging and so on. So even if you are not of that mind, to be that accountant of, and most small businesses and micro businesses, but then they are in the creative industry, are workmen, or they are traders, they are artisans, not necessarily. So make sure that you surround yourself with a team of persons who can manage some of these other areas for you. You need to understand the importance of having a team, because sometimes creatives tend to think that you want to operate alone as a solo, as a solo. So that's very, very important structuring. Okay, we're gonna move on to another question. Sansia?
Yes, question from Sana Rose. Sana, I'm gonna unmute your mic and you go ahead with your question. Sana, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you clearly. Thank you for this opportunity. My question is about social media. I've seen a lot of, my area is visual arts, so I see a lot of artists on social media. It's a very accessible platform to post your work. And particularly since COVID-19, there has just been this massive explosion of creativity going on. Lots of people posting their stuff to different hashtags and that kind of thing. I even see musicians on there. But I'm just kind of mindful of what are the things that we need to bear in mind, because even non-creatives are using the space, they're reposting people's work. Just kind of wondering how creatives and non-creatives should navigate the social media space in terms of IP. Yeah, so that's my question.
Okay, thanks. Who want to take that? That sounds like something that Cavelle take.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what Teasea has spent some time kind of breaking down for us from a practical perspective in a cost-effective manner, which is for matters concerning designs. So, for example, the design of a sandal or your jewelry, things that are more accessory oriented. Some of that you can just email to yourself. And I think I saw in the group chat, someone was asking whether you should email. I don't suggest that. I actually suggest a real letter, real something that actually came through the mail and remains sealed, having gone through the mail as proof. And then what some persons have done is to take a look at what's becoming a bestseller and then go through the formal process of registration. Now, in the digital space, what you're seeing is a lot of people saying, oh my gosh, here's some art that I have produced. Anybody interested in buying? They're at that point thinking, okay, I need to get this merchandise off your hands. One of the things we hope through a medium like this is to establish that, okay, when you sell the original painting, that's gone. But there are ways to manage reproductions so that, okay, you are not parting with your original in a particular way that you can't obtain a further benefit from it, or you can't stop someone from using it. So you have to register that. So there's a voluntary copyright system. And of course, you can do the poor man's copyright again. But what I suggest that you're doing, if you are creating a website and you're saying, I'm out there and I'm looking for people to partner with me, what I suggest is that you establish a collection. So you don't put everything out there all at once. Even if you've done the poor man copyright registration, you put out some things and you get some sense of feedback. So then you're taking your business offline eventually, and now you're in deeper discussions with potential business partners. What I think is happening now is a bit of overexposure. Everybody's just throwing everything out there. I think what you want to do is set up your Facebook page, set up your website, and establish relationships with your business team, and to say, okay, this is a teaser of what I have to offer. I wouldn't put my entire collection out there. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
I think as well, Sana, one of the things that we need to be careful of in this time, and what Cavelle is also saying, is that one of the things that we need to be very careful of in time when everybody is turning online, make sure whatever you put online at least has has fundamental protection.
Okay.
Whatever it is. So if it is a poor man's copyright, or if it is under your entity and protected under your trademark or something, get formal protection. Because once it's online, once it's in the social media space, there's very little that we can do to prevent persons from sharing it and even and so on. But there is recourse that we can look at the tail end. In other words, if there are somebody sharing something and looking to sales and benefits from it, then if you have protected it, then at that point you can go to them and say, no, it can't work, it has to stop. But if you had not, then it's going to be difficult for you to prove that this thing was originally yours, you know? And as Cavelle says, be careful of what, be very mindful and strategic about what you share. And don't just share the whole thing just so, you know, let's be very strategic in terms of what it is that you share, how much of it that you share, and of course, making sure that what you share is protected.
Thank you. Useful guidance. Thank you.
All right, cheers. Anybody else, Sansia?
No, no more. Oh, yes, a question from Daniel. Are Jamaican trademarks recognized internationally? Will Jamaica adopt Madrid's protocol?
Minister,
Adopting Madrid's protocol active licenses already registered can sole traders brand trade internationally? The question is in the group chat if you need to reread it. It's from Daniel and Thomas.
What's the last part of the question, Sansia?
Can sole traders trade internationally?
Well,
I think what he's asking is if, okay, you can use from Jamaica with your Jamaican brand that you've registered only at JIPO and trade safely internationally. Well, with Madrid protocol coming, you'll get the opportunity to use one application to register your trademark in participating countries. But until that happens, what you have to do is register your trademark in the territory you intend to do business in. So for example, if you're going to sign a distribution deal to have your footwear distributed in Canada, those designs need to be protected there. And you have to think about whether you're going to approach Europe, because once you get into Europe, you have the whole EU and the free movement of goods, and there are rules concerning intellectual property rights that may be different from the rules in your territory. So you have to think of who's going to be your business partner to take you there safely. When you look at the US model, they use a lot of licensing agents, people skilled in inking licensing arrangement in different countries. That's sort of the kind of direction that we're going to have to go. Establish points where there are people who are skilled in inking these contracts, because they can't just be answered in one conversation like this. You have to look at the nuances of it and say, okay, this is how I need to assemble the team. I'm going to spend my money and I'm going to register in the US and I'm going to register in the in Canada. And I know that, okay, there's a likelihood that I will be distributing in Europe. So I must approach the EU or an EU country for registration, knowing full well that once it gets into the EU system, you can't say, okay, this distribution deal was just for Sweden. They're going to say, no, there's a free movement of goods. And so that's how it has ended up in another EU territory. So I'm saying the distribution deal, you can stay from Jamaica and do business internationally, but you're going to need some additional trademark registration in particular. That's generally where it is more relevant. Or industrial design, you're going to need more layers of protection, and you definitely need to have an agent or somebody skilled in looking at the different underlying laws in those jurisdictions, so that you don't get you don't limit yourself.
Can I chime in? Because I mean, to cut the long story short, no, you're not protected internationally when you're registered in Jamaica, and that's why everyone is pushing for the Madrid protocol. You understand? And as Cavelle is pointing out, this is something that, as a micro and small business and you're just starting up, it does take money. And this is what I'm saying. And that's why I even use the example of Walt Disney, where they are not registered in every country. It's a very expensive thing to undertake. And one of the cons to even IP, and people need to understand this, that somebody, like, we can design and make this ring, and then somebody else come and just do something else like so, and it's a different design. So you protect it to look like this, but the fact that somebody else come and make it look like this is a different thing. So people need to understand that as well. They can just change a simple thing and it's considered a new design. And Marcus can chime in and tell me if I'm wrong and right, or right, because you're the expert with this as well. But this is one of the things, that's why I said, like, poor man copyright, you can't go wrong. Just register, mail the thing them to yourself, because at the end of the day, even if you can't afford to undertake everything, at least you have proof that you started, you are the originator of a certain design. Another thing I wanted to touch on as well is that we can be here in the Caribbean doing something, somebody comes, see something and carry it somewhere else, or you export something, you send something, somebody sees something on social media, they like it, they buy it, and they rip it off somewhere else. And you're over here and don't know what's going on. And this happened to a company in Trinidad. I can't remember. I think they make juices for kids, and they have a particular brand and so on. They were exporting. One of their big markets was in Africa. And when they actually went there and set up shop, they realized that there was a company literally knocking off their logo, everything. It was so close that you had to really have an expert eye to recognize that it wasn't the same logo. And they had a big market over there with a product that originated in Trinidad. So you really have to, one of the things that you have to look at is where you really want to do business. Start, as Cavelle says, research who are the partners. I mean, I cannot wait till this Madrid protocol come in Jamaica, because even though for example, we send our things to Europe, and that was one of the things I strategically work and invested in our company to ensure that we got some kind of protection. And we started with a trademarking in 22 different European countries. And that was done through the UK. So the different ways, different countries you can enter, that's a part of the European Union, and get the protection for wherever you're sending your things to. It's a lot of work, but thank God, as you know, if you look at the plus sides to COVID, you're there home, research, talk to the relevant companies and find out what is necessary. You have the experts here now, ask them the questions and know how you can start doing that conversation. So whether you're a sole trader partnership or limited liability, you don't have to start whatever, research and see what works for you and start there. Mm-hmm. But protect your IP, because Jamaica is very talented, very, very talented, and people are leveraging this too much. I could even talk about, I had a customer who was stationed in Japan, and she was so mad. One visit back to Jamaica, she was telling me how a Japanese came to Jamaica on vacation, left and went back home, came back to Jamaica, spent approximately 2 years where no one would teach him how to make jerk. But he had a plan, and he stayed and went around the island and basically learned, use the Jamaican seasoning, Marcus says about geographic indicators, use it like the seasoning from St. Andrew, use Walker's Wood, kind of whatever, or use Portland, whatever, created his own idea and flavor, brought it back to Japan, and went into an international deal with Pringles to produce a jerk flavored potato chips. And jerk is a word that belongs to Jamaica. Is the Maroons them start that, But is that word protected? I heard the minister spoke about Jamaican cannabis. What else did he mention? Jamaica rum. Another thing that we overlook as well, and it grieved my spirit, I'm not telling a lie, as a very proud Jamaican to see other people leveraging what we work so hard. It's our culture, it's our knowledge, and it's our livelihood that other people are taking, and we need to maximize that. Another thing that I think is underdone is the Jamaica chocolate. Jamaican cocoa has a very distinct flavor, and there's a lot of different chocolate artisans now popping up in Jamaica, but we need to ensure that we have a GI for Jamaican cocoa as well. Because I know for a fact, talking to other entrepreneurs, that you have Belgium is considered one of the top chocolate manufacturers, and you have a Belgian company that actually buys the cocoa fat from Jamaica because of the distinct flavor of the cocoa from Jamaica. So that's another industry that we need to ensure that the government agencies need to step in and ensure that the GIs, when people can just use our things like this and be making money, and with the over here and can make so much money from it. Our economy can, creativity is what's going to really bring us there.
So Harold, maybe I can say a few words on that.
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, I did want to say something earlier when Carrie was talking to, in terms of, and as the minister said, how to, get to a place where Jamaica ought to be, whereby the cultural and creative industries are treated and protected and managed and are facilitated, as the industry should, and deserves to be. So two things. There was a National Cultural and Creative Industries commission, which I know Minister Grange had been spearheading, I think, a committee perhaps under her portfolio, which was intended to bring together several players from the creative industries in different sectors with a view to advancing policy, moving forward on a business plan, and seeking to really create the infrastructure and the mechanisms to have the industry be able to move forward. So I mean, I'm not, really sure as to what's happening with that at present, but perhaps you would know as well, Harold, based on the mapping that's being done, how that can also fit with that. Very important, I think, for us all, government and non-government people focused on that. Secondly, the Prime Minister recently announced an effort to protect brand Jamaica, as it were. Again, something we've talked about a lot over several decades, but have not put in place the kinds of infrastructure and institutions that can protect and help us to properly monetize, this valuable brand. And so I think that's also something that we collectively, should be working on, both on government and government, to seek to have this in a kind of comprehensive, coordinated policy approach that can lend real benefits to the sector. Just on the budget protocol, I see that I was asked by Howard on the chat about the budget protocol. So yes, the protocol, as I was saying, we're in the final stages now. It's going to cabinet next, and then we'll go to Parliament. So it should be passed this year. What I did want to clarify, though, is that with the budget protocol, it's not that you get with one registration, automatic registration and protection in all 180 odd countries. You have to choose which countries you want to register in and pay accordingly, and then you get the registration through the one procedure, right? But you still have to go and choose your countries and pay. It's not a one global system that's going to protect you in all countries.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarification, and I think it's an excellent segue into what I wanted to point persons to. And greetings, Howard McIntosh, I know you're wearing a student hat now, but he also has many other hats in the entertainment industry as well. That he wears, including the Entertainment Advisory Board. I wanted to point out, and the minister mentioned it earlier as well, the fact that the data for the creative and cultural industries there is a dearth of proper empirical data on creative industries in Jamaica. And we have embarked on an exercise to try to close that gap. And we are in fact mapping with the assistance of the British Council, as Minister mentioned earlier, the creative industries. So to determine who is in the industries, where are the industries now, where exactly are the industries compared to where they ought to be internationally, what kind of data, what kind of ecosystem do we have within the industries, and also how do we value the industries, and the contribution of the industries to GDP is also a critical thing. I mean, the minister alluded to one of the reasons why the creative industries don't seem to be counted when we're dealing with even relief from COVID industries. There was no pull out to focus on the creative industries, and part of that is not that the country or the government does not recognize the creative industries, but just that we have not been able to articulate clearly the value of the creative industries over the years, and the value to GDP, and so, as such, that an investment can be made from which an expected return can be reaped. You know, that's how businesses run. You know, you measure the investment based on the value of what it is that you know can return. We know anecdotally that the creative industry has been the hinge, that has been the support of the country for many, many years, and we are naturally good at it. But in terms of how much exactly do they value, and where exactly are they compared to where they ought to be a world player, we don't quite know that yet. And at this point, I want David to help me to launch the last poll, which asks the question whether or not you have, first of all, whether or not this session has been useful for you, and then asks you as well whether or not you have completed the survey related to the mapping exercise, and encourages you to do that off the bat. But while we close, I want to ask our panelists if there's any 30-second thoughts, last thoughts that they want to leave with our participants. I see that the chat room has been very, very active, which is a great thing. So we will make this session available. We are recording this session, and then we're going to package it and make it available, certainly including the presentations as well. Minister, can I start with you? Do you have any final thoughts for the group?
All right. Final thoughts. Let me go through. I was making some notes. All right. One. So yeah. So as I said, clearly the Madrid Protocol is a priority for us. I know a lot of people have been asking about time frame. I had put mid-year as my time frame starting the year. As you had heard, Marcus, we have it as an agenda item for this financial year. I had hoped we'd get it up and running by mid-year. I'm still hopeful. Clearly, the things have changed a little bit. Things have shifted. I think our next step is to go to the Legislative Committee of Cabinet for them to approve the changes before they can then be tabled. So I know that committee. I sit on that committee. I know that committee. We haven't met for a little while, as you can imagine. Most of the emphasis has been focused now on meetings related to COVID. I'll speak to the Minister of Justice, who chairs that committee, to see when we can get a meeting up and running of that committee, and if we can get the Madrid Protocol, well, the changes to the Trademark Act, which would incorporate the Madrid Protocol, done. I think everybody has covered. If you register now, if you are covered internationally, and that's no until we do have the Madrid Protocol up and running. Just to say, in relation to GIs, we have been doing fairly good work covering some of our most important GIs. You know, a good point was made about intellectual property, and even when it comes to the geographic indicators, you have to be able to be specific. I think Jamaican jerk is covered. Doesn't mean that jerk without the Jamaica before it is covered. So right. Jamaican jerk as a term is covered, and clearly we have to be able to define everything we cover. So Jamaican rum is covered, Blue Mountain coffee is covered, and if you understand the indicator, it specifically indicates the parameters that you have to reach for you to be able to label something as Jamaican jerk, for you to label something as Jamaican rum, for you to label something as Blue Mountain coffee. And clearly it's an involved process that involves us being able to set clear parameters and get industry buy-in so that everybody kind of agrees what does it mean to have Jamaican rum. I agree that Jamaican chocolate or Jamaican Coke or things of that nature can also be covered, and it's something that we're looking at. We're constantly looking at new things. So like Jamaican ganja, you know, what does that mean? We believe ganja is one of those things that you will be able to have even more detailed designations. So for example, in Ghana, you have Demerara rum, which is separate from Guyanese rum. And it means it comes from a special region in Guyana. And I think ganja is one of the things that we can look at in relation to saying Orange Hill ganja, but what does that mean in terms of the process for you to qualify to say you really grow Orange Hill ganja? What does it mean in the profile? So a lot of these things we're still working through, especially with our quote unquote newer industries. But GIs are things that people should continue to research, to look to see how it can be utilized in relation to your own products, and to approach JIPO around that. Another point that I'd like to make in closing, remember, and I want to raise this point with the social media, I think somebody has been doing good work in the chat, putting on some of these things. Remember, when you go onto a lot of these platforms, you agree to a number of things relating to your intellectual property. And a lot of us don't like to read the fine print. We just click accept. As a creative, you should read the fine print, because you should appreciate the sort of intellectual property rights that you're giving the owners of these platforms. And you should decide whether it is in your benefit or not to give the owners of these platforms these intellectual property rights, right? Very, very important for you to do that. And I cannot overemphasize the poor man's copyright is real, is legal, does work. So don't be afraid to do that self-registration, but also go to JIPO. Very accessible. Now, send them your emails, send them your questions. Marcus gets excited by this line of work, right? So please, you call upon him anytime. We have a really good team there, and I really want to help all our industries focus a little bit more on intellectual property. So, and again, I put my email in the chat. So if you had questions that weren't addressed here, you can send me. If I can't address them, I'll find somebody who can.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think I think that's how we're going to wrap up this afternoon. We promised you that we would finish by 12 o'clock. It's now 12 minutes past 12. I want to do two things. Firstly, is for those persons who have said that they have not done the survey, which seems to be 50% of you. Please do so now. Click on the link that David has posted in the chat to do so. It doesn't take more than 5 minutes to do so. It's very important. Sometimes creatives, when we see these kind of surveys, we say, nah, man, somebody else will do it. And then we complain that we're not counted, you know? So, so it's important that we do it. Also, it's important that we share with our fellow creatives that they need to do this survey. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to do is to really thank our panelists. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Marcus Goffe from JIPO. Thank you, Cavelle Johnston. Thank you so much, Teasea, Bennett, and thank you so much, Minister, for being here with us this morning and sharing with the group of entrepreneurs who are online. Thank you so much. Next week, we're going again. Look out, keep what they say, Sansa, watch your space for the topic that's going to be on for next week, Thursday. Reminding you as well that we do have a virtual biz hub that the JBDC does on a Wednesday, where we do webinars on Tuesday.
That's on Tuesday.
Tuesday. I'm sorry, Sansia. We have seminars that we do on a Tuesday. That format is a little different. It's not a panel discussion. It's more of a formal kind of webinar presentation. And on Thursdays, we have this JBDC in concert every Thursday at 10 a.m. So watch this space for the topic that is going to be coming up, and it's going to be very exciting. You won't want to miss it. Tell your friends about it. Tell your colleagues about it. Tell your fellow entrepreneurs about it. Finally, I want to implore you to continue to keep safe in this period. Continue to encourage each other in this period. Continue to abide by the government's guidelines in terms of protection of ourselves as a people. Let's continue to be safe in this period, and let's also use the period productively to make sure that we grow in this period, and at the end of the period we come out way ahead of where we were when the period started. So thank you so much for attending, and that's it. Have a good afternoon.
Just before you go, everybody, just want to inform everybody that come tomorrow, our online version of the Entrepreneur's Journey will be live on Facebook at 10 a.m. So you can watch this our Facebook page, and you will get to see an interesting interview with Mr. Christopher Record. He is the managing director of T-Tech Jamaica. So that promises to be exciting. Also, for persons who have been asking for the recordings, they will be available on our YouTube page. Just subscribe to our channel, and you can get all the recordings from in the past, both the virtual Biz Zone and the In Concert series. Thank you.
Thanks, Ansia.